Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Vijf Vragen, or Five Questions, as we would say in English. This is our podcast featuring the people of the Netherlands' diplomatic network here in the U.S. We're talking with the diplomats and policy officers about the strong bonds between the United States and the Netherlands, as well as our diplomatic work in the U.S. We're focusing on the collaborations between our two countries that make our relationship a partnership that works. I'm Jeff Allenak from the Embassy's Communications Office, and today I'm talking with Ron Linker, the head of the Public Diplomacy, Press, and Culture Department at the Embassy. Yeah, that's a fancy way of saying he's my boss. So I guess that means I'm on my best behavior today. Thank you for joining me today, Ron.
Thank you, Jeff. Happy to be on my favorite podcast, Vijf Vragen.
Oh, this is your favorite one.
Listen to all the episodes, of course.
Well, I'm glad to have such a high rating on your podcast list. I know you're an avid podcast listener, so you must be the one who downloads every single one, right?
Well, I've got a long commute and I've got a long list of podcasts, and this one, whenever the new episode pops up, I, of course, am interested in hearing not only about the work that we do, but also about our colleagues. Yeah.
I asked you to join me today to talk about public diplomacy, but before we find ourselves in the cultural cocktail of that discussion, I'd like to start with a more basic question. What's your background and how'd you end up at the embassy?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm not a regular diplomat. I didn't come out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm a former reporter. I was a correspondent in Paris, France, and in Washington, D.C., and worked for Dutch Public Broadcasting, the NOS, for almost a quarter of a century. Before I decided to make a career switch, and I had studied journalism as a student and also international relations at the University of Amsterdam. So I've always been interested in foreign countries, living there, talking to people who live there, interact with other people. So it's always been a wish for me to not only report on the issues that matter, but also try to have some sort of influence on the relationship between countries. And in 2016, a job opening came up, and I was lucky to be selected.
So nice. Was that print, broadcast, radio?
NOS, nowadays it does almost everything but newspapers. But I started out as a mainly radio reporter. I love radio. I've been listening to radio for a very long time. In the Netherlands, you used to have these plays on the radio where, as a kid, I used to really love those. And even with a small cassette recorder, for those of you that was the old tape that we used to play with, and we would record these stories. Could be about anything, about things that happened around us, and then shortly after came school radio. So that's how I got into it. But NOS does radio; it does also TV. So after a career in radio, I switched to TV, and in Paris I was a TV correspondent. So that was the last job I held as an NOS correspondent in Paris. And for me, the interest lies also in storytelling. How can we express an idea or a complex concept to a wide audience? How do you translate something into 90 seconds or sometimes 80 seconds? And so that's been my way into the storytelling, and eventually here at the embassy.
So you mentioned Paris. How many countries have you been in as a reporter?
Oh yeah, I've been to that's actually a lot. So I've lived in the United States and in France as a correspondent. But before that, I was a foreign desk reporter. So they would send me out to elections. So my first election coverage was the UK, and that was 1997.
So that would be kind of like on assignment. So
you would go there.
You'd be based in the Netherlands, but then go over abroad for the story.
So UK. I've been to Russia, the first elections of Putin.
Oh.
I've been to the Middle East. As a matter of fact, that was for a while. That was my regular job, to go there every once in a while, to the Gaza Strip, to the West Bank. And then, of course, eventually I became a correspondent, and then you actually live in a country and you report on everything that happens around you.
You mentioned storytelling. That plays well into public diplomacy. So what role does public diplomacy play in the relationship between the U.S. and the Netherlands?
So I think it's very important. So there is let's say, the high-level diplomatic collaboration between two countries. The ministers versus the secretary, or with the secretary you have, of course, the ambassador talking to the high-level people. But there's also a broad range of influential stakeholders in the United States that can really play a role in increasing our relationship. So public diplomacy plays a very important part in that sense, and also in increasing our reputation here in the United States. Research shows, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to think of this, but if you have a good relationship with a nation, your investments will increase. People from the United States would invest more in us. If we maintain our reputation, tourism would increase, and so we try to reach out to people, and that's what we do sometimes with events. And just a couple of weeks ago, of course, we had the Dutch Tulip Days at the residence, where we really tried to use the national flower of the Netherlands as sort of the backdrop to organize a number of events, and these could be of wide-ranging topics, from anti-Semitism to Semicon, from Rosie the Riveter and honoring that legacy to talking about AI. So there were 13 events in 3 days during those Dutch Tulip Days.
13 events. Wow. So with public diplomacy, then it's not government official to government official. It's the government to average people,
right?
Or other, as you say, other stakeholders. So that could be anybody.
Yeah.
So that was a large part of the Dutch Tulip Days.
Right. So, you try to map out and think about all of the people that are relevant for our network, that also have maybe a connection with the government or connection with a political party that could be relevant. And so it's interesting to exchange ideas with these stakeholders, as we call them. These are our friends. Here in the United States. You talk to them, you invite them, you exchange ideas, and then hopefully you find ways to collaborate. And I think that's the beginning of a solution for all of these challenges that the United States faces, the Netherlands faces, and how can we help each other?
Yeah, I actually spoke with Susanne while she was here. So I want to show you some videos, what she had to say, and then we'll talk about it. I'm here in the residence with floral designer Susanne Schrijvers. How did I do with the last name there, Susanne?
Perfect.
Perfect?
Yes, I recognize it.
You recognize it at least,
Yes.
so it's not too bad. Okay,
No, it's
great.
not too bad.
Well, let's talk about your work with Dutch Tulip Days. So
Yes, the theme of every year is different, and that's the embassy people in
embassy
charge.
staff.
The embassy staff comes out they come up with a theme.
Okay.
And then they ask me to think about, they say we have these 3-4 rooms to do, and the staircase, what can you make about that? So like last year it was the bicycle.
Okay.
Yes, they always come up with a theme related to the Netherlands.
Right.
And then, so I give them suggestions. We could hang bicycles, tires, the wheels, yes. So I like to use the wheels of the bicycles as a structure of my arrangements. So
well, what about this year? What's the theme for this year then? Is it
So this year is 80 years of freedom. So they came up with Anne Frank, with the cemetery, with the Rosie theme, and then they asked me if I can come up with ideas, which in the beginning, you have to, because there are a lot of people involved.
Yeah.
And you have to convince everybody.
Yeah.
So I came up with the white tulips like for the cemetery, and a lot of people were not convinced about that. They were,
Why is that?
No, it's too simple white. Do some colors. Do some colors on a table. Or
I see white flowers everywhere. So
yeah,
you
it's white
must
flowers.
have persuaded them.
Yes. I said no, I think it should look like the cemetery, and what is very specific is these white crosses that are lined up there. Because I'm
the headstones.
Yes, the headstones. I'm come from this area. I know this cemetery.
Oh, Margraten.
Yes, I was born just next to this, so we know it. Everybody knows this cemetery.
Do you know families that have adopted?
Yes, and I know even one gardener. One of the girls in my class, her father was the maintenance guy in there. So everybody knows this.
Yeah.
And what's very specific is when you drive by, you can see all these crosses lined up. And that's what I wanted to represent here with this design, with the white, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Susanne, and Susanne was the floral designer.
Yeah, well, she's a great colleague and a friend, I must add, because we come up as an embassy, as she said, the embassy people, the staff here at the embassy, come up with these ideas, and then she has to work with us and find out a way to translate these ideas into something that looks beautiful. And I think she did a great job this year. She mentioned the cemetery, Jeff, and that's of course the story of Margraten, where more than 8,000 U.S. soldiers are buried after and during World War II. These are heroes, and there's an adoption program in the Netherlands, as you know, that takes care of all of these graves, and we wanted to pay homage to that adoption program, and that's why she's talking about the cemetery. And you know, if you see the images of the cemetery, you would see these white crosses in the green fields, and that we try to replicate that in the library, and that's why the white tulips stand out. And it was a bold idea, but I think looking back on it, I think it was a great memorial for Margraten, a great way to talk about this adoption program of which not many Americans know.
Yeah, no, they don't. So how do you pin down the themes and then choose how to highlight them? Like you mentioned Rosie the Riveter and Margraten.
Yeah, it's not a linear process. As a reporter, you only have like a couple of variations on how to tell a story. You've been a newspaper reporter, so you probably know, okay, you can write, an analysis, or you can write a commentary, you can write a news report. But, when you tell a story here within the embassy, it's liberating, because I now have so many other ways to go, roads to choose in terms of telling the story, and so it becomes more of an interactive process. When you think about 80 years of the end of World War II, what stories resonate with you? And it starts with us here at the department. We start talking about, well, it's this that we remember, it's that we remember, and then the second part is, okay, and what about our American friends? What's resonating with them, the 80 years anniversary? And we then have these themes, and then we start interacting with Susanne. And then we start talking about, okay, what does this mean in terms of flowers? How can we tell this story with the tulips, with the flowers? And just for your story, you talked about Rosie the Riveter. Yeah. We thought, how can we make something that's floral, a floral design, and that looks like Rosie the Riveter?
Well, you mentioned that. Can I break in?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she actually talked about that. So let's hear what she had to say, and then we'll come back to it. Let's talk for a minute about in the living room, Rosie the Riveter. Oh.
Rosie the Riveter, yes. So they came up with this the poster, you call it?
Yeah, the big poster.
The big poster, and they wanted to do something with it with flowers. And as I said, it's a tradition in the Netherlands, when all the flowers are blooming in the fields, like the tulips, to have a parade. A parade going on with all these big, how do you call that? Like these parade cars?
Oh, we call them floats here.
Floats, yes.
Yeah, we call them floats.
And all the floats are decorated with real flowers, and hundreds of people are working on that. So I said, let's make something like that. Let's use a lot of flowers, and
that's the reflection of
that's
Rosie,
the
right?
reflection of Rosie, made out of flowers. Yes.
So in those parades in the float,
yes,
it's not just random flowers. They try to make a
it's
an
always
image out of
also
it.
they make an image out of it. Yes, and they can come up with the image. So sometimes it will be like a political thing going on at that moment. So they make like a big head of the minister of the Netherlands, or of the Queen, or something like that, all made out of flowers. Yes, so it's a theme-related thing. Yes, so it's different every year.
And how many flowers are in the Rosie reflection?
Yeah, it's difficult to tell, but more than 3,000.
More than 3,000.
3,500.
I can imagine
flowers.
you're not counting every time you put one in.
No, we lost the count. But
you'd lose count.
I know how many stems we bought for it.
Okay.
Yes.
Just for that?
Yeah, just for that.
How many stems?
Yeah, like
3,000.
Yeah, exactly. And some stems had a few flowers on it. Like the mums, the chrysanthemums, they have a few.
Yeah.
On one stem you can use like 5 flowers.
Oh, so it could be more than, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that was there was a big Rosie the Riveter poster, like 6 feet tall, right? And 3 or 4 feet wide. It was pretty big. I remember trying to hang that up.
It's the iconic poster, I would say, of Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah,
when people look for Rosie the Riveter, Google it, you will find an image and you will see this poster. It has a yellow backdrop with a lady in an overall, in factory clothes, and this bandana, red bandana, and she has her arm bent in a fist, and the text says, "We can do it," right? And these were the Rosies that were going to the war industry in the United States as their husbands were fighting in Europe, and so very important part for us, also for the Netherlands, to realize that we probably would not have been liberated, as some of the Rosies would say, had it not been for these women working in the factory. So we're very thankful, and I think it's a Susanne explained it excellent already. It's like a mirror image. Imagine you're standing in front of that iconic poster, and there's a pool of water in front of you, and you see the reflection of that image in the water. It's not exactly the same, and but it does get, you immediately recognize, okay, yeah, this is it.
You get what it's supposed to be, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And Susanne did such a great job in designing that and in finding ways to do it, because it's mirror image, and that means that everything has to be opposite from what you think it is, and
especially when printing that printing the mirror image.
Right. Yeah, I remember at our department somebody was printing the
somebody
poster.
is who is that somebody? That might have been me. Go ahead, Ron.
No, but we all checked it, Jeff. So, but we printed it, and it turns out, we had to find a mirror image of that, and so.
But she had an ingenious solution that we didn't print it. She held it up to the window and traced it, and that was backwards, and then she used that. So even when something goes wrong. It's great to have a partner who can think through. Okay, how can we get through this? How can we fix it? So
But these backdrops, they are impressive. They're beautiful. But what I thought, this is the backdrop for the story. The story is our paying tribute to Rosie the Riveter. And I was so happy to see 4 Rosies there.
For the tulip naming, yes.
There was a tulip named after them, so you can almost see how much flowers are involved there. But just to have these ladies there sitting on the front row, and the ambassador and all of these people talking about the importance and the important role they played, I thought it was excellent. And this is exactly what I mean with public diplomacy, where we're connecting with Americans, and we all appreciate each other. We appreciate the Americans for the role they played in liberating our country, and the Americans hopefully appreciate us for paying homage to their sacrifice and their efforts.
And that tulip, that Rosie tulip, is it Tulipa Rosie the Riveter? Would that be available anytime soon? Will people be able to buy it? Do you know?
So that's the commercial part of it. I'm not well versed in it, but you can imagine that there's just a couple of bulbs now. At a certain moment, we had one bouquet, and we could tell our guests this is probably the only bouquet in the United States that's on public display. But so they breed just a handful of these bulbs, or maybe 100. And then when you have these, it takes another 2-3 years before you have 200.
You got to multiply.
You got to multiply it, and that takes time. So before we see it here in the shops, it may take longer than you might think.
Yeah. Well, I see a public diplomacy project maybe 5 or 10 years from now where we plant Rosie the Riveter gardens in towns throughout that have.
Yeah. Well, you have the Netherlands Carol on, of course, the big monument outside of Washington, D.C. that also ties into thanking the Americans for the role they played in liberation and afterwards. And they have a big tulip fields just in front of it. It's a beautiful sight. You look over the Potomac and you see the Lincoln Memorial, you see Congress, Washington Monument, the White House, and then you have these beautiful tulips. So wouldn't it be wonderful if that at someday we would be able to plant Rosie the Riveter tulips there?
It would be. It'd be a nice addition. There's 2 elements of Dutch Tulip Days that I don't think we really explored, and that was the Anne Frank room and the foyer. So I talked with her a little bit about that. Let's take a look at those videos. And then the Anne Frank room.
The Anne Frank room, yes. So the Anne Frank room, we had to keep it very sober. How do you say it?
Solemn, maybe?
Solemn, yes. Yeah. And we realized when we were looking through her diary that nature was very important for them.
Mm-hmm.
It was the only contact they had with the outside. They needed food and groceries and things like that, but it's also very important for people to see nature,
Mm-hmm.
to keep in contact with the seasons, because they couldn't go outside. The only thing they saw was this chestnut tree,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw it starting the leaves coming out, blooming, leaves falling down, and no leaves at all. So they knew what season it was when they were looking at the tree. And she wrote about the flowers she got. So they got the food from outside, but people also would give them flowers. So even during the war, there were flowers produced in the Netherlands. They grow flowers still. It's very important for people to have flowers, I realized.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it should be like in the healthcare program to have
In the healthcare
flowers
program.
in your house.
Ah, okay.
It changes your mood, definitely, to have like a plant, something living in your house.
Yeah.
And not a plastic plant, but a real thing. And for them it was important to receive these flowers. So we checked out what kind of flowers she talked about in her diary.
Okay.
And these flowers I made sure to get. I was very lucky, I could find them all. Because she was talking about peonies. It's a little early for peonies, but I still could find them
Okay.
now. And of course tulips.
Mm-hmm.
And they got some plants also, so we had to find some old-fashioned plants that they had during the war, which we were able to find too.
Okay. And then there's 3 chestnut trees there
And
too.
then we have these 3 chestnut trees to represent the tree they could see through little holes.
And that's the same species of tree, right?
Yeah,
it's not a
it's the same
sapling from the Anne Frank tree.
No,
but
it's the same species.
It's the
only,
same
yes.
species.
There are samplings on the Capitol Hill of
Yeah.
that tree. Yes.
Yeah, there's one. Yeah.
So I'd imagine coming up with a way to decorate a room dedicated to Anne Frank would be quite a challenge.
Yes,
because
yes.
it's heartwarming at one side, but it's also tragic on another.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we cannot forget that Anne Frank was the victim of the Holocaust. She did not survive World War II because she was prosecuted just for being Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened in the Netherlands as well. The betrayal of the Anne Frank is a horrible part of this story. In the end, they found back her diary, and it was published. And people found solace in the texts. People, of course, could feel the sadness knowing that she did not make it out. But they also found inspirational words in it and short moments of happiness. And these words have been inspiring for generations. Even 80 years after World War II, it's still one of the most read books worldwide. There's so many kids who will read it at some point, and we thought we wanted to see and highlight some of the inspirational words that she gives us. And so we found quotes in the diary.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Susanne says, not many people know this, is that while they were hiding in the secret annex during the war, every once in a while people from the resistance would bring them flowers.
Mm.
And these would not be, of course, the big grand bouquets. No, it would be small flowers like daffodils or hyacinths. Very simple, common flowers. And so what we did is, on a table, we would print that quote in a little card, and then that quote from the diary would be presented in a bouquet form. So if Anne Frank, for instance, mentions that there were flowers being delivered for the birthday of somebody in the secret annex, she would sometimes talk about what type of flowers that were delivered. And we would then present these flowers in small vases on the tables. It was very small, very solemn, as Susanne also concluded, and I think that was a great way to represent it. And then we had that combined with the chestnut tree. when I read the quotes on the chestnut tree in the diary, I can almost feel like this was such an important tree for her, not only for seeing the seasons, but some of the happiest moments were for her looking at that chestnut tree and just simply not being worried for a moment. And I thought that was both, it's sad to realize that a child had to go through these times, but I think we can never forget what happened to her. And in a small way, we were able to bring back the story of Anne Frank in our dining room at the residence.
There's one other element that was there, and that's the staircase in the foyer. So I have one other short video of Susanne talking about that. Another stunning visual is the stairs and the hanging tulips.
Yes.
Is there any inspiration there?
No, the thing is, we just wanted to be red, white, blue, which represents the Netherlands and the United States too, both, and to keep it very simple this year. We didn't want to have it looking like a kids party going on. Yeah. But so we mainly did the red, white, blue and the orange tulips.
And then there's a couple of accents with
and
the
some
photos,
little
right?
flags and the photos. Yes, photos from the Liberation Days.
Those are real pictures from.
These are real pictures from, and you can see people are very happy to see the American coming to liberate the country. So it was a very festive day. Yeah.
I can only agree with what Susanne just told us about the foyer. This was an idea of celebration, of taking these pictures, looking at the joy of these Dutch people, seeing the Americans, the Canadians, the Polish, the Allied forces come into their towns. And we wanted to recreate that feeling. We wanted to recreate the gratitude. Just like Susanne put flowers in all of the rooms, she was also looking at this and thought, what would be helpful here? So you will see the red, white, and blue from the Dutch flags. We had them in small vases hanging from the ceiling, and then combined with these big photos. These were authentic photos that we looked for in the archives in the Netherlands, and we're able to present in such a way that you felt like, okay, I'm driving into this town. And I think, that was a great entrance, and it allowed for us to show the Americans this was what it was like 80 years ago when, amongst others, you liberated our country.
Okay. So how does the Netherlands tailor its public diplomacy approach to resonate with the American audience, whether it's trade, innovation, or our shared values? How do you pin that down?
Pin that down, yeah. The United States and the Netherlands are sometimes faced with the same challenges, or the same opportunities, for that matter. We can work on coastal protection, for instance, whenever there's a flooding, or we can work together in the field of security. So there's many options and challenges and opportunities that we can find each other. But I think what makes this relationship special is, like you said at the beginning, this truly is, and I believe it, it's a partnership that works. I can see that Dutch people and American people, even though they're on different continents, there's a big piece of water in between us, but there is something that connects us. It could be the sense of humor, the fact that we all feel the same about democracy and freedom, and I think these things make it easier for us to work. I think what binds Americans and Dutch people is the sense of pragmatism, where we're very hands-on, and Americans have this can-do mentality, and combine that with the pragmatism of the Netherlands, and you've got a great formula. So it's really, when you say pin down, it's like discovering every day almost new fields where we can collaborate, and that I think is the big benefit of having a successful public diplomacy.
Okay. Any other big public diplomacy events on the horizon for the embassy?
Yeah, of course. We're always looking ahead at the department and trying to identify opportunities for us to highlight and to celebrate the friendship that we have with the Americans. And I think in line with the 80 years of freedom, the World War II year that we've had, For us, the Netherlands, we have our Liberation Day on May 5th. That was the day when the Nazis capitulated, and so that for us is the formal end of World War II. Just before that, on May 4, is Remembrance Day. This is where we commemorate all the people that have passed in World War II and after in our military services. But on May 5th, that's when it turns from mourning the dead to celebrating the restoration of our freedom. And that's what we're going to do at the Netherlands Carillon, just outside Arlington, or just outside Washington, D.C., in Arlington, I should say, where, it's been renovated. It's a great carillon. It looks beautiful. It's a great location, as I said, there's many opportunities to just sit outside. So I would invite all of our listeners to just come on May 5th in the afternoon, go to our website or check our social media accounts at NL in the USA to see exactly the details, how you can attend. It's going to be beautiful because we're going to have a big orchestra from the Netherlands come in to play alongside of the carillonneurs in the Netherlands Carillon. And also a special surprise is the Freedom Lecture that will be given this year is by the American bestseller author Robert Etzel, who wrote a book on one of the themes of the Tulip Days, the Margraten Cemetery and its adoption program. He will be presenting the lecture on that special day. And then 1 week after, on Saturday, May 10th, it's EU Open House. A great way for us and our European friends to show a little bit about what you're doing here in Vijf Vragen, the other side of diplomacy. So we're inviting people to visit us at the residence of the ambassador, which is downtown.
And they have to sign up for it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's done in group. You get a group tour through the building, and anybody who's seen the pictures on our Flickr page, NL in the USA, knows that the residence is beautiful. It's like the National Gallery of Arts, the Netherlandish wing. You have all these beautiful art forms from the Netherlands hanging there, and so we hope to see a lot of people there. And then for the longer term, Jeff. That's we know that the Americans are looking forward to celebrating their 250th anniversary next year. And there's many hooks with the Netherlands. I mean, we're one of America's oldest friends, and so we look forward to celebrating that. And then, of course, the big one, the World Cup soccer.
World Cup soccer.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to talk baseball, but you're going to switch to soccer. Go ahead.
And I think just as much as I'm a student of baseball, I think. It's an opportunity for Americans to really get into this game and hopefully enjoy it as much as people in Europe.
Yeah, they certainly sell out the stadiums. When I remember, I think the World Cup was here in '94. I want to say
96.
Was it 96? Okay.
94. You were right. 94. 96 was Atlanta.
Yeah, 96 was that was the Olympics. But I remember just seeing the stadiums at RFK Stadium here in DC at the time. There was some, and it sold out like you wouldn't believe.
Right. And there's some great American soccer players nowadays. We've got Ricardo Pepi, who plays in the Netherlands. He's a great striker. You got Christian Pulisic playing in Rome. You have
and they're from the U.S.
And they're from the U.S. So there's this young team of American players that really are ready to compete with the world. And I'm really interested and excited to see them play. And hopefully there's a game, America against the Netherlands. Of course, we had that during the last World Cup, and unfortunately. It didn't end well for the Americans, but maybe this time there's time for a rematch. And I'm not going to tell you who I'm rooting for.
Now that's diplomacy right there, when you don't say who you're rooting for. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Ron, for joining me for this episode of Vijf Vragen. Though, again, I might have asked a few more than 5 questions. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please tell us what you think in the comments below. And be sure to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode or the other videos we post on our YouTube channel. I'll be back behind the microphone next month with another member of the Dutch Diplomatic Network in the United States. Until then, you can keep up with our work on any of our social media channels, Facebook, X, Instagram, or LinkedIn.
And Blue Sky.
I need to update my script. We're on Blue Sky now, that's right. Just search for NL in the USA. And you can stay up to date on how the United States and the Netherlands have a partnership that works.